All right. So, good evening. It is Friday, April 10th. This is Tim Ashe, President of the Vermont Senate, here for my nightly update on the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I've got a series of updates today. The highlight will be the governor's extension of the stay-at-home order. So, I will talk about that in a bit. Also, some new information from the Department of Labor in terms of how they're doing fielding the huge volume of calls that have come in. And tomorrow I'm going to be responding on my Saturday update. It is going to be my sort of mailbag edition. I'll be answering questions that have come in over the course of the week that I haven't yet had a chance to respond to, that I believe will be helpful to more than just the person or group of people who asked me the specific question. Sunday will probably be the first time I take a break from a live video since this whole outbreak began. It is Easter Sunday, and I'll be taking that day off, but I will expect to post a taped video at 5:30 with some reflections about what it's been like in a leadership role in government as we've gone through these times, some reflections on the people I serve with, working with the governor, but not really focusing on the specific details of the crisis and specific challenges that people have been facing. So hope you'll check that out. It will not be a live video, but then I'll resume on Monday with the normal schedule. So to start with, one thing, my day began today with a first in Vermont history, which was the Vermont Senate met remotely and cast votes. For those who aren't part of the legislative process or who aren't particularly, immersed in how government operates, you know, come election season, you follow some of the bigger themes in the news, but you're not someone who, like me, is occasionally watching C-SPAN 2 late at night. The Vermont Senate, just like the Vermont House, have been meeting at the State House to conduct the people's business for a couple hundred years or more. And the Vermont Senate has never cast votes outside the State House. So today we did that for the first time in Vermont's history. And in a way, it was a bit melancholic. We wish that we were there in person, carrying out the sort of traditional approach of state government. And it feels strange to have some external event make it so that we can't conduct normal business and keep government operating the way it always does. That said, it went off more or less without a hitch, and it will not make you want to cancel your Netflix subscription. However, I will post after this the link so you can watch the YouTube replay of it. My guess is that if you get through 5 or so minutes, you'll probably not want to watch the remaining hour and 55 minutes, but it will give you a sense of the people who are serving in the Vermont Senate. You'll hear some of the rather archaic language we use as we go through bills, but it's all towards writing the best laws we can to meet the people's needs. So today we cast probably 20 different votes, including an eviction foreclosure moratorium for the life of the emergency. That has effectively already been done by the courts for about half the state. It extends the same policy. It had the support of both tenants and landlord groups. And then some legal changes we made to allow people to change power of attorney, transfer deeds remotely during the emergency, since people are trying to get their fiscal or legal work in order in case they were to contract COVID-19. We've helped EMS providers with a little flexibility so that they can get through this hard time, and some licensed professionals so that they can keep doing the work that they need to do to protect public safety throughout the state. So there was not a lot of debate in this morning's session, but the work we did was really important. So we'll encourage you to check that out. The second thing is, someone asked me, not one of my direct constituents, but I received a request that I recognize Tracy Wright from Graniteville. Tracy apparently has made and then donated hundreds of masks individually, which is just such an amazing gesture and act of volunteerism and community spirit. And so Tracy, for on behalf of the Vermont Senate, and I'm guessing many more people than that. Thank you very much for all you've done to help in these tough times. I also want to highlight a Vermont success story, a company called Meal Train. Some of you will be familiar with Meal Train. If someone is sick or can't care for one's own meal needs, Meal Train is effectively a way of organizing a group response to help support someone. It might be someone who has just had surgery, and it allows a group of friends to divvy up the assignments and deliver fresh meals to the person. So in this moment, obviously medical professionals and many others who have been isolated, quarantined, are greatly in need of support from friends, family, and strangers. And Meal Train has been cited by a number of national news outlets because it's being used to deliver meals to medical professionals throughout the country. They still operate here in Burlington. They were members of VCET, the Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies. So always great when a local success story is really, taking it to the big time. And Meal Train is clearly meeting a need there. Before I turn to the stay-at-home order and some of the unemployment updates, I want to talk about something that we learned late yesterday, which is that the Northwest Correctional Facility in Swanton, which had I believe, one positive test. They did a pretty comprehensive set of tests, and the initial batch of analysis found that 28 inmates had tested positive, and I believe 5 staff. Group housing facilities, whether it's elder care or any other age group, and correctional facilities are unfortunately places that sort of lend themselves to quick transfer of infection from person to person because people are in close quarters. So this is obviously very, very bad news. And I'll just say 2 things about that. First, for those of you who had been able to tune into an earlier session that I had directed people to several weeks, maybe a week and a half ago, with the Commissioner of Corrections, they had been preparing for the event of a wave of infections at a particular correctional facility by preparing to use the so-called work camp in St. Johnsbury. That is a state Department of Corrections facility which has been at about half capacity in terms of the number of inmates. They've been readying that to be a medical isolation area for people if they were to test positive. And so shortly after the test came back, the Commissioner of Corrections moved forward in bringing that plan to life. Others have been calling for a much broader policy of releasing people from the Department of Corrections supervision in greater numbers, and using the word furlough, meaning the person is not, their sentence isn't going away, but we're temporarily allowing them to be in the community to avoid putting themselves at unnecessary risk. The numbers behind that concept, I'll just say that about a few months ago, the average number of people in Vermont prisons at any one time was about 1,750. On March 15th, that was down to 1,642, so about 100 lower than normal. By April 7th, just a few days ago, the number was down to 1,421, so about 350 people lower than the normal. And that, I believe, is a direct result of trying to get people out who are appropriate to be released back into the community. So we will be working with the Department of Corrections and the judiciary in the early part of next week to see how many more people fit that category of, even if for a temporary basis, getting them out of a facility where they might be at higher risk of either getting infected or spreading infection. And it's obviously a very challenging situation. But the good news is we have reduced that overall inmate population. Now the thing is, we've got to figure out how to keep people safe now that there's been this outbreak of infections. So hopefully I'll have more to say about that on the Monday update. So now to get to today's biggest bit of news, I'll say that the governor today extended the stay-at-home order, which is the broad order to close most business activities in the state. The governor extended it from its current expiration date of April 15 to midnight of May 15th. So this is obviously very challenging news, even for those who fully embrace it. The idea that our economy has effectively shut down just in the last 3 weeks, it's almost too much to take some time that it happened so quickly. And you can already sense that some people are feeling stir crazy with the amount of time they've been at home or more or less unable to socialize, see family and friends. And so pushing it out to May 15th, I have spoken to the governor a number of times this week. He is as sensitive to what people are going through as anyone, and yet very determined that we do extend the order, and I support him in doing that. And basically what the governor's position is, and I think that this is a sensible one, is that the efforts we're taking right now have helped flatten the curve so that the number of people who are becoming infected and the number of people who have passed away and the demands on our intensive care units and the need for ventilators, we have not hit the worst case targets that we had thought were, or I should say, worst case projections that had been out there. And so the question now is whether we take our foot off the gas, to use the governor's perhaps race car driving metaphor, or if we keep our foot on the gas to continue the policy which has been keeping more people safe and reducing death. And the big worry amongst public health officials and epidemiologists is that we lessen the restrictions too quickly, and then people go right back out and reinfect, and we have another spike in cases. And so the vision is, I think, extending it to May 15th, and then perhaps between now and then being able to make some adjustments to allow some people to reopen business and go back to some semblance of normal, but do so in a structured way that keeps the most people safe. So, May 15th is a long time away. It means that we will have gone through all of these spring holidays that families are gathering for, whether it's Passover or Easter and other celebrations for other denominations. This is not easy news, but it is public health sort of defined, I think. A couple extra details about the stay-at-home order. A number of people who are innkeepers, B&B owners, motel, hotel owners have been prohibited under the existing order from having any bookings except for people who need to be isolated for medical reasons or who are medical professionals or someone who's directly working on COVID-19 response. The stay-at-home order extension order today allows for lodging facilities to begin to book once again for dates occurring on June 15th or later. So beginning effectively, lodging establishments can begin booking for June 15th and beyond. So that at least provides some predictability and allows businesses to start re-engaging. It allows you to start using your resources to market and say that you hope to be open for business. Obviously, it's subject to change. We don't know quite what will happen between now and May 15th. We don't know what will happen between now and June 15th, but you can go ahead and start reigniting your bookings. The second thing I'll flag of a more second order issue is that auto inspections, there are many people who are not wishing to go to auto repair shops and inspection stations right now because it's difficult to be in the waiting rooms without being very close to people. And so auto inspections that are due April are now being extended 60 days. So if you have an April sticker, you have a 60-day extension to be driving around in the meantime. I would hope that if your car is not safe and it's your wheel has fallen off, that you would go to an inspection station anyways. But for those of you who feel that your car is in safe condition and you do not feel comfortable going into the station to get the inspection sticker changed, you've got a 60-day extension. So we'll leave it at that for now. And then last, just before joining this update, I was hosting a session with the Commissioner of Labor. The Commissioner of Labor was on to talk to us a little bit about the state of affairs at the department, what they're doing to increase the capacity to take calls and address some of the concerns that you've been expressing to me, and where things are heading. And so to give just a handful of updates as they came to us, these are in no particular order, so bear with me. The first thing is that one of the challenges the department says they've had is that roughly 50% of the people who are filling out applications have some kind of issue or error of some sort associated with them, so that it requires a human to get involved. It doesn't just go automated and result in a check being sent. So when they've had 60 to 70,000 people going through the application process, you can imagine what it's like if 50% of them have some kind of problem that's flagged that needs to be addressed. So that just puts it in perspective. The second is that as a result of all of those issues, it means that people who might otherwise just flow through the system and be done and start getting their checks have to keep re-engaging with the department over the phone. And as a result, people have been waiting unbelievable amounts of time, making unbelievable numbers of calls to try to get through to someone at the Department of Labor. I can only imagine how frustrating it is, and the anxiety, as it's now been 3 or 4 weeks for some people, that you haven't been earning income. And even if these checks are going to be retroactive, you still need to be able to pay some bills in the meantime. If money is taken directly out of your account to pay some recurring bills, for instance. And so I will post in the comments section here, one of the requests from the Department of Labor is to move towards an alphabetical schedule of calls so that people will space out their attempts to reach the Department of Labor for unemployment practices. So, and I'll put up the specifics, but they want on Monday people A through D or something to call, and then the rest of the alphabet throughout the week. They will not turn someone away if you call on the wrong day. But what they believe is that if everyone were to adhere to that alphabet system, it would dramatically reduce the number of people who are all trying to get in at the exact same time and allow more people to get immediately on the phone or have the least wait time possible. So I know that many people are going to see that request and say, I have to wait till Wednesday to make a call, and it's going to not feel very good to hear that after what you've been enduring. But know that it's almost like people who are weaving in bumper to bumper traffic. The more people who weave, the more backed up it gets. In this case, the more people who honor the alphabet system, the easier it will be for everyone to get through. And so people have to rely on their own ability to hold off a little bit longer. And I respect that there are people who really can't wait longer. So, but that's that. The next thing is the Department of Labor, I think, has now acknowledged that they do not have the capacity to take in the volume that we've already received, let alone the next wave, and have put out a bid for a call center to take all the direct phone calls so that the Department of Labor specialists can focus just where there have been problems and get those moving quicker. I had hoped that this would already be up in place, but in order to be eligible for FEMA money, because this is not going to be cheap, it had to go through a particular procurement process, meaning you had to do something like a abbreviated open bid. So we hope that sometime next week the bid process will be closed, a vendor will be selected, and that they'll be able to train those people, get them online so that they can start taking the huge volume of calls that are coming in. The governor's team has also designated people from a variety of departments to try to play sort of a SWAT team approach as well. I have no idea if this is going to produce results that matter to people who are going through this, but we will hopefully get a report back. The other thing that I'm going to report, this is from the Commissioner of Labor, is that what they really expect at this point, and this is news that I am not happy to be relating to you, but I do feel that predictability and honesty are the most important things in what we're going through. He believed that they would be processing self-employed and independent contractor checks beginning on April 20th, which would be a week from Monday. So as I say, I'm not the administrator of this, and I'm not happy to have to report that additional weight, but that was the commissioner's public assertion to the Speaker of the House, myself, and the majority and minority leaders of the House and Senate about an hour and a half ago. So while that is another week to wait, week and a half from today, if we're really adding it up, I do want to remind you it will be retroactive to March 29 when the federal law went into effect. It will include the normal amount that you would be eligible for in this equivalent of UI plus the $600 a week. So if it's any consolation, you can start imagining what the weekly check will be like. And I can only say that those of us who were legislators that were on this call were all emphasizing the need to build the same kind of surge capacity on the unemployment side that we did on the medical side. Right now, we've got 400 extra medical beds up at the Champlain Valley Expo. We've got another 100 plus at UVM's Patrick Gymnasium. There's 50 in Barry, 50 in St. Albans. And I think we need to have the same mentality to get through all of the people's applications and requests to get benefits. And so I will be putting that at the top of my list each day, because it's, while the state is dependent in large part on the federal government to give guidance and start moving the dollars, we have to do the best to control what we can control, which is making sure we have the people to actually take the calls. I will close on a couple notes. One of them is on this, and I'll tell you, when I worked for Bernie Sanders in the late 90s and early 2000s, the rule of thumb that Bernie wanted in the office, and I was the front desk guy taking 3 lines of phone calls for the first period of my time working for Bernie. He did not want the phone to ring a third time anytime someone called, because he wanted someone to get a human being. And he believed, as I do, that people don't want to speak to machines. They don't want busy signals. Well, with 70,000 people calling in 2 weeks, that might have been a rather difficult task, but just say that I understand absolutely how dispiriting it is to not get a human being to talk to when you're desperate and need someone. So we're going to advocate with everything we've got to make sure that we get the resources so that you don't have to wait. Second thing, I just want to acknowledge Bernie did end his presidential bid the other day. It was, it's bittersweet, I think, for those of us in Vermont who know him personally and know what an amazing journey this has been. And I won't opine, because not everyone who watches these updates is, I don't even know what many of your political viewpoints are, but I will just say that I used to drive around the state with Bernie all the time over the course of 3 years, spent a lot of hours just a car seat away from him. And I remember being in the car. He'd be on the prehistoric car phone with other members of Congress. He'd be on the phone with people all over the country. I'd see him interacting with people throughout the state of Vermont, and the exact same passion and vision that he had back when I worked for him as right out of college is the exact same thing we've been seeing. And it is really kind of an amazing export Vermont has had to see tens of millions of people see the same kind of inspirational leadership and articulation of a vision. And so I'll leave it there for my political soapbox. And then last, on a sad note, Representative Bernie Juskowitz, who had left the House, I believe, end of 2018 was the end of his time in the legislature, passed away of COVID-19 this week. So this has affected all the legislators who knew him. He was a wonderful guy, a member of the UVM Board of Trustees, always smiling, just one of the nicest people. So wanted to acknowledge that. So I will be back answering questions tomorrow that have come in over the course of the week. And then on Sunday, as I say, I will do a pre-taped video that I'll post at 5:30, just reflecting on what it's been like to work with the people in the Senate and the House, especially the Speaker and the Governor, as we've tried to do our part of working through this crisis. And I hope, in the meantime, those of you who are celebrating religious holidays do so safely over this weekend. And I look forward to having you back with me tomorrow.